A brief flash from a rifle pierced the night, just enough for Master Chief Derek Vance to witness an enemy machine gunner's head jerk violently and his body collapse behind sandbags. Through his night vision goggles, Vance watched the fighter's two companions stumble in bewilderment, leaning over their downed friend. They had no idea that a silent predator was already marking them through a thermal sight. Two more muffled cracks echoed through the mountain valley. Two more figures fell. "What the hell?" Vance whispered into his radio, observing the enemy positions erupt into chaos. Fighters who had been confidently holding their posts suddenly began to die from an unseen threat. "Who is firing?" "That would be me, Master Chief." The voice in his earpiece was calm, professional, carrying none of the raw excitement that should come with taking out multiple targets in complete darkness. Position 2, engaging now. Vance swung his optical device to the second fortified position, just in time to see 4 more enemy fighters drop in quick succession. Bolt action, aim locked, trigger squeezed. 4 shots, 4 kills. Barely 6 seconds had passed. This couldn't be happening. One shooter, total darkness, targets nearly 1,000 meters away, falling as if someone was playing a video game with cheats. "Douglas," he hissed. "How are you?" Position 3. Another burst of quiet gunfire, though Vance still couldn't pinpoint its origin. 3 more heat signatures vanished from his screen. "Master Chief, you might want to start moving. You have about 45 seconds before someone in that compound realizes all their defensive posts just went silent." 23 Navy SEALs lay hidden among the rocks, 300 meters from a heavily fortified enemy compound. Every single one of them was a seasoned fighter with years of combat under their belt, and each one stared with dropped jaws at their night vision screens, watching the impossible unfold in real time. 7 tough defensive positions, over 30 enemy fighters with overlapping lines of fire specifically designed to create a death trap no assault force could survive. These were the kinds of defenses that had already turned back 2 previous American attacks, costing 8 lives and millions in damaged gear. And someone named Douglas was dismantling them all as if it were just a practice drill. Position 4, engaging. More bodies dropped. Position 5, engaging. The enemy fighters were starting to panic now, firing wildly into the blackness. Their weapon flashes gave away their spots just before Douglas's bullets found them. Positions 6 and 7, simultaneous engagement, and clear. All positions eliminated. "You are cleared hot, Master Chief. I suggest you move quickly." Vance realized his mouth was agape. He snapped it shut and pressed his radio button. "Viper team, advance to phase line Alpha. Douglas, maintain overwatch, and for heaven's sake, tell me you aren't going to run out of ammo." "Plenty of ammunition, Master Chief. Though I may run out of targets if you don't hurry." The compound is waking up. As the SEAL team rose from cover and began their fast assault, Vance found himself with one burning question that would have to wait until after the mission. Who on earth was Douglas? And how had Admiral Harrington found someone who could do what they had just witnessed? Because 12 hours earlier, when a young female lieutenant had walked into their briefing tent, and Admiral Harrington had announced she'd be taking out all 7 defensive positions by herself, Vance had been certain they were all about to die on a suicide mission, led by some Pentagon desk jockey's untested idea. He had been so wrong it was almost comical, except there was nothing funny about watching 38 enemy fighters eliminated in under 2 minutes by a shooter whose location he still couldn't identify, despite years of training to spot snipers. "Viper 1, this is Douglas. You have 4 fighters attempting to circle your left side. Engaging now." 4 more gun flashes in the darkness. 4 more bodies hitting the ground before they could threaten his team. "Master Chief." Chief Petty Officer Marcus Webb panted over the radio as they sprinted toward the compound. "I don't know who this Douglas is, but I'm buying them a drink when we get back. Heck, I'm buying them an entire bar. Get in line, Chief. I'm adopting them." They breached the compound's outer wall, explosives blasting the gate from its hinges. Flashbangs exploded in blinding bursts of light and sound. The assault had begun, and it would be a brutal, close-quarters fight where SEAL training and experience would decide who lived and who died. But the impossible part where one person neutralized an entire defensive network built to repel battalion-strength attacks, was already done, and the 23 Navy SEALs charging through that gate knew with absolute certainty that when this was over, they owed their lives to someone they'd never met, never heard of, and until 12 hours ago, never believed could possibly exist. Admiral Harrington had brought them a miracle, wrapped in a rifle scope. Her name was Lieutenant Marley Douglas, and she was about to prove that sometimes the most dangerous person on a battlefield is the one nobody sees coming. But 12 hours earlier, nobody in that briefing tent believed any of this was possible. 12 hours earlier, the briefing tent smelled of stale coffee, sweat, and the unique tension that came from planning operations where lives were often lost. Lieutenant Marley Douglas sat in the back row of folding chairs, her presence barely acknowledged by the 23 Navy SEALs who filled the rest of the space. At 26, she was younger than most of them, smaller than all of them. According to her personnel file, she was there as an intelligence contact, someone to inform the operators about enemy positions and then stay safely behind while they did the actual work. The SEALs didn't know that Marley Douglas had a secret. Several, actually. Admiral James Harrington stood at the front of the tent, a man in his late 50s, whose weathered face and silver hair carried the authority of 3 decades leading special operations. Behind him, a large tactical map displayed the target compound, a group of buildings in the mountains of northern Syria, where high-value targets were thought to be meeting with foreign arms dealers. "Gentlemen," Harrington began, his voice rough from too many years shouting over helicopter rotors, "this is a capture-or-kill operation. Our main goal, Hassan al-Kuwaiti, a suspected bomb maker responsible for attacks on coalition forces across 3 countries. Secondary goals: any foreign nationals providing material support and gathering intelligence from the compound's communication center." He clicked a remote, and the screen changed to show aerial surveillance images. "The compound is built into the mountainside. 3 main structures, multiple defensive positions, an estimated 30 to 40 fighters on site. They have night vision. They have heavy weapons, and they are expecting us. Previous attempts to scout them have been spotted and driven off." Master Chief Petty Officer Derek Vance spoke up from the front row. "What's our approach route, sir?" "Helicopter insertion 3 clicks out, then a foot approach. Using this ridgeline," Harrington traced a path on the map. "The problem is here," he pointed to 7 marked spots, 7 defensive emplacements with overlapping lines of fire, machine gun nests, likely crew-served weapons, positions reinforced against airstrikes. They control the only usable path to the compound. "Can we take them out with precision strikes before we go in?" asked Chief Petty Officer Marcus Webb. "No, we need surprise, and any airstrikes will alert the entire area. The targets will scatter before we can secure them." Harrington's expression was serious. "Those 7 positions need to be neutralized silently and at the same time. If even one opens fire, the whole operation is compromised." The tent grew quiet. Everyone in the room understood the numbers. 7 tough positions, over 30 fighters. A night operation, requiring complete surprise. It was the kind of mission that looked simple on paper but turned into a disaster in real life. "Sir," Vance said carefully, respectfully, "silent, simultaneous elimination of 7 defensive positions. That's not realistic. We would need a full sniper team, and even then—" "I'm aware of the challenge, Master Chief." Harrington cut him off. "Which is why I'm bringing in additional assets." He turned toward the back of the tent. "Lieutenant Douglas, front and center." Marley stood smoothly, her movements efficient and precise, and walked to the front of the tent. She was 5'7", athletically built, dark hair pulled back in a regulation bun. Nothing about her appearance screamed warrior or operator. She looked exactly like what her personnel file said she was, an intelligence officer with an advanced degree in Middle Eastern studies. The SEALs watched her with expressions ranging from curiosity to doubt. "Lieutenant Douglas will be joining your team on this operation," Harrington announced. Vance's face showed carefully controlled confusion. "Sir, with respect, we appreciate intelligence support, but this is a direct action mission. Having a—" He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Having non-combat personnel on target could complicate things. Lieutenant Douglas isn't here as intelligence support," Harrington said. She's here to solve your 7-position problem. The confusion in the tent deepened. Webb spoke up. Sir, I'm not understanding. One person cannot neutralize 7 hardened defensive positions, regardless of their job title. Harrington's expression didn't change. Lieutenant, show them your qualification scores. Marley stepped to the computer console and pulled up a file. The screen filled with shooting qualification records. The SEALs leaned forward, reading the numbers, and the confusion turned into disbelief. Sniper qualification, X, long-range precision, 98.7% hit rate at distances over 1,000 meters. Low-light operations, qualified. Night vision operations, qualified. Stress course scores that beat every record in the database. This must be a mistake, someone mumbled from the middle of the room. It's not a mistake, Harrington said flatly. Lieutenant Douglas holds the current Marine Corps record for long-range precision shooting. She's completed advanced sniper training at 3 different schools. She's qualified on more weapon systems than anyone in this tent, including, and she's going to eliminate all 7 of those defensive positions before you even reach the compound perimeter. The tent erupted into barely controlled protest. Voices overlapped, all saying variations of the same thing. Impossible. Unrealistic. Too dangerous. Untested in combat. Harrington let them talk for exactly 10 seconds. Then his voice cut through the noise like a sharp knife. Gentlemen, quiet down and listen. The tent fell silent. I understand your doubt. I'd be worried if you weren't doubtful. But Lieutenant Douglas isn't some desk worker with good range scores. She's been operating in secret roles for the past 3 years. The reason you've never heard of her is because her work requires absolute secrecy. The reason she's here now is because this mission cannot succeed without her abilities. He turned to Marley. Lieutenant, explain your plan. Marley's voice was calm, professional, carrying none of the defensiveness the SEALs might have expected. 7 positions. A maximum separation of 200 meters between emplacements. I'll set up a hidden spot on this ridge. She pointed to the map, which gives me an elevated firing position with clear sightlines to all 7 locations. The range will be between 600 and 900 meters, depending on the target. In total darkness, Webb pointed out, without night vision, that would give away your position with an infrared signature. Correct. I'll be using thermal optics for target identification and acquisition. The enemy positions will show up clearly against the cold mountain rock. I'll engage from longest to shortest range. 7 shots. Elimination time under 90 seconds for all positions. 90 seconds. Vance's voice showed open disbelief. 7 targets. Varying ranges. Total darkness. With the accuracy needed for instant kills so they can't raise an alarm. That's not possible. Marley met his eyes steadily. It's not only possible, Master Chief. It's the easy part. The hard part is getting into position without being detected, maintaining absolute silence, and timing the shot so your team can use the brief window before the enemy realizes what's happening. And if you miss, Vance challenged, if even one position survives and opens fire, I don't. The statement wasn't arrogance. It was just a fact, delivered with the same tone someone might use to say, water is wet, or gravity exists. Admiral Harrington stepped forward. Master Chief, I'm not asking for your approval. This is how the operation will proceed. Lieutenant Douglas will insert with your team, establish her hidden spot and eliminate the defensive positions on your signal. Your team will then continue with the main mission while she provides overwatch. Question. Vance clearly had 1,000 questions, but he also understood the chain of command. No, sir. We'll make it work. Good. Operation launches at 2:20 hours. Lieutenant Douglas, you have 6 hours to prepare your equipment and coordinate with the team. Dismissed. The SEALs filed out of the tent, most of them casting doubtful glances at Marley as they passed. She ignored them, instead approaching the tactical map to study the terrain in more detail. Harrington waited until they were alone. They don't believe you can do it. I know. Are you confident? Marley studied the map for another moment, calculating angles and distances in her head. 7 static positions, predictable fields of fire, targets who think they're safely hidden. Yes, sir. I'm confident. Good. Because if this goes wrong, a lot of good men are going to die. He paused. And your career will be over before anyone outside this tent ever knows you exist. Understood, sir. Harrington studied her for a moment. You know, when I first read your file 3 years ago, I thought it was fiction. Nobody shoots that well. Nobody has that kind of natural talent combined with that level of training. And then I saw the video from your qualification course, and I realized we had something unique. Someone who could do things that shouldn't be possible. Training and genetics, sir. My father was a competitive shooter. My mother was a physicist. I understand ballistics at a gut level that most people don't. It's more than that. You have something that can't be taught. He gestured at the map. But talent doesn't mean much if you freeze when people start shooting back. Have you ever been under fire, Lieutenant? Marley's expression didn't change. 3 times, sir. All classified operations that don't appear in my official record. I performed as expected, and if things go wrong tonight, then I adapt and complete the mission. Harrington nodded slowly. I believe you. Now go make the SEALs believe it too. Preparation. The armory tent buzzed with the controlled chaos of operators getting ready for combat. Marley moved through the space with quiet efficiency, selecting her equipment with the careful thought of someone who understood that gear choices could mean the difference between success and disaster. Her main weapon was a custom-built precision rifle, a bolt-action model chambered in 300 Winchester Magnum, chosen for its balance of range, accuracy, and stopping power. The rifle was fitted with a suppressor that would reduce her sound signature to a level unlikely to be heard beyond 200 meters, especially with mountain winds to mask the sound. The sight was where things got interesting. Instead of traditional night vision, which would emit telltale infrared signals that enemy fighters with night vision could detect, she had mounted a thermal imaging scope, a cutting-edge unit that cost more than most cars and allowed her to see heat signatures through complete darkness. That's some serious hardware. Marley turned to find Master Chief Vance standing behind her, his expression still doubtful, but at least making an effort to be polite. It's adequate for the mission, Master Chief. Adequate. Vance picked up one of her rifle magazines, examining the match-grade ammunition. Most snipers I know would call this a dream setup. You're talking about it like it's a rental car. Tools are only as good as the person using them. True enough. He set the magazine down. Look, Lieutenant, I'm not trying to be difficult here, but my men's lives depend on you doing something that sounds impossible. I need to know you can actually pull this off. Marley finished attaching her suppressor and turned to face him fully. Master Chief, I understand your concern. If I were in your position, I'd be skeptical too. But here's what I can tell you. I've been shooting competitively since I was 8 years old. By the time I was 16, I was winning national championships. I joined the Marine Corps at 18 and went through every advanced training course they could put me through. For the past 3 years, I've been doing work I can't discuss in places I can't name, with results that speak for themselves. The Admiral mentioned 3 times under fire. What happened? Marley considered how much to say. First time was in Afghanistan. VIP extraction, hot landing zone. Enemy fighters in elevated positions. I provided overwatch while the assault team moved. Eliminated 11 threats before they could engage our people. Second time was Somalia. Similar situation. Third was Yemen. More complicated. The point is, I've done this before. I've performed under pressure, and I will perform tonight. Vance studied her face, looking for doubt or bravado and finding neither. What's your longest confirmed kill? 1847 meters. Moving target. Wind at 15 knots gusting to 20. Downhill shot with a 15-degree angle requiring significant ballistic adjustment. Jesus. Where? Can't say, Master Chief. He nodded slowly, accepting the limitation. All right. Let's say you're as good as your record said. What do you need from us to make this work? Timing and communication. I'll need to be in position 30 minutes before you begin your approach. When I'm set, I'll call ready. You'll give me a 10-second countdown and I'll engage starting at 0. Your team needs to be moving the instant I take the first shot, because you'll have maybe 2 minutes before someone realizes those positions aren't responding to radio checks. 2 minutes isn't much time to cover 300 meters of rough terrain. Then I suggest you move fast, Master Chief, because that's all the window you're getting. Chief Webb joined them, his massive frame making the tent feel smaller. Master Chief, we need to discuss approach routes if we're working with a sniper element. She's right here, Chief. Ask her directly. Webb turned to Marley. No offense, ma'am, but we usually coordinate with Overwatch before. None taken, Chief. Here's what I need from you. Marley pulled up the tactical map on a nearby tablet. I'll be here. She marked a position, which gives me angles on all 7 targets. Your approach should be from the southeast, using this ridge for concealment. Stay low. Move slowly until you hear my first shot, then move fast. I'll maintain overwatch on your advance, but my primary focus has to be the defensive position. What if we encounter resistance you can't see from your position? Then you handle it the way SEALs always handle resistance, with overwhelming force and professional skill. I'm not a miracle worker, Chief. I can clear your path, but I can't hold your hand once you're in the compound. Webb's expression shifted from skeptical to something approaching respect. Fair enough, ma'am. What about extraction? Same route out. I'll stay in position providing overwatch until you're clear. Then I'll move and link up with you at the extraction point. If things go completely wrong and we get separated, I can get myself out. I've done escape and evasion training. I speak Arabic, and I can navigate by stars if I lose all my tech. Vance and Webb exchanged glances. The woman standing in front of them didn't match any of their ideas about intelligence officers or female personnel in combat zone. She talked like an operator, thought like an operator, and seemed completely at ease with the idea of being alone in enemy territory with nothing but a rifle and her skills. All right, Vance said finally. We'll trust the Admiral's judgment. But Lieutenant, understand something. If this goes bad, my main responsibility is to my team. If I have to choose between completing the mission and pulling you out, then complete the mission, Master Chief. I can take care of myself. Your job is to get Hassan al-Kuwaiti and get your men home alive. That's the priority. Vance nodded, a hint of approval in his expression. You might be all right, Lieutenant. Let's gear up. We launch in 4 hours. The next few hours passed in that strange mix of boredom and nervous energy that came before combat operation. Marley checked and rechecked her equipment, mentally practicing the shot sequence. 7 targets, varying ranges, all needing instant incapacitation. No room for error, no chance for second shots if she missed. She'd done harder things, but the margin for error on this one was razor thin. As the sun set and darkness fell over the forward operating base, the assault team gathered on the helicopter pad. 23 Navy SEALs in full combat gear, carrying enough firepower to flatten a small city. Every one of them a professional warrior with years of training and combat experience. And Marley, smaller than all of them, carrying less equipment, looking like she might be the team's junior intelligence analyst, rather than the person their entire operation depended on. Admiral Harrington appeared to see them all. He shook hands with Vance, exchanged brief words with several other team members, then approached Marley. Last chance to back out, Lieutenant. No shame in it if you're not ready. I'm ready, sir. I know you are, but I had to offer. He lowered his voice. Marley, these men are trusting you with their lives. Don't let them down. I won't, sir. Good. Then get on that helicopter and show the Navy what Marine Corps marksmanship looks like. The MH-60 Blackhawk lifted off at exactly 2200 hours, its rotors beating the air as it climbed into the darkness. Inside the cargo bay, the SEALs sat in 2 rows facing each other, weapons between their knees, faces painted with camouflage, eyes hidden behind night vision devices. Marley sat near the door, her rifle case beside her, watching the landscape disappear into darkness below. In a few hours she'd be lying on the ground on a mountainside, looking through a thermal scope at enemy fighters who had no idea death was coming. 7 positions, 7 shots. Then the SEALs would storm the compound while she provided overwatch, making sure none of them died because she'd missed a target or failed to spot a threat. No pressure. The helicopter banked sharply, dropping into a valley to avoid radar detection. And Marley felt the familiar surge of adrenaline that came before combat. Not fear. She'd learned long ago how to manage fear, but anticipation. The knowledge that soon she'd be testing her skills against an enemy who would kill her without hesitation if they detected her presence. She closed her eyes and ran through the shot sequence one more time. Position 1, 847 meters. Wind from the northwest at 10 knots. Target behind sandbag emplacement. Headshot required. Position 2, 63 meters. Wind, same direction but elevated position creates different wind drift. Target likely wearing body armor. Headshot required. Position 3, 98 meters. The calculations ran through her mind like music, each shot a note in a symphony of violence she'd compose in the darkness. By the time they reached the insertion point, Marley Douglas would be ready to prove that the Admiral's faith in her wasn't misplaced, and the SEALs would learn that sometimes the most dangerous person in the room is the one nobody expects. Insertion. The helicopter flared hard, its nose rising as the pilot stopped its forward movement 30 feet above the rocky ground. The SEALs fast roped out in a smooth sequence, each man sliding down the thick rope and immediately taking a defensive position. Marley went forth, her rifle case strapped to her back, hitting the ground and rolling away from the rope before coming up in a crouch. The Black Hawk lifted away immediately, not wanting to linger where enemy forces might hear its rotor. Within seconds, the sound faded into the distance, leaving 24 operators alone in hostile territory under a moonless sky. Vance's voice came through Marley's earpiece, barely a whisper. "Radio check." She clicked her transmit button twice, the pre-arranged signal for affirmative. Around her, the SEALs were forming into their movement formation. Every man knew his position through countless hours of training and previous operations. "Douglas, you have the lead to your hidden spot. We'll follow at 50 meters. Move out." Marley pulled out her GPS unit, confirmed her position, and began moving up the rocky slope. The terrain was treacherous, loose stones that could slide and make noise, scattered thorny plants that snagged at gear, uneven ground that could twist an ankle in the darkness. But she'd trained in conditions like this, understood how to move quietly, even over difficult terrain. Behind her, the SEALs followed like shadows. For all their size and the weight of their equipment, they moved with impressive stealth. This was what they did: insert into hostile territory, move undetected, strike with devastating precision. They were professionals at the top of their game, but tonight they were relying on someone they'd met only hours before to clear their path. The hidden spot Marley had chosen was a rocky outcrop, about halfway up the mountain slope, positioned to give her clear sightlines to all 7 defensive positions below. It took 40 minutes of careful movement to reach, every step placed with consideration for noise discipline, and avoiding being silhouetted against the skyline. When they reached the position, Marley immediately began setting up her rifle. She'd practiced this setup 100 times, could do it in total darkness by feel alone. Bipod deployed, rifle positioned, scope lens covers removed, ammunition staged for quick access. She activated her thermal scope and began scanning the compound below. Through the green-tinted display, the world resolved into patterns of heat and cold. The rocks were cool, appearing dark, but 200 meters below, 7 defensive positions lit up like beacons. Each one showed the heat signatures of multiple human bodies clustered around crew-served weapons. Position 1, 3 fighters, 1 behind a heavy machine gun, 2 supporting, range 84. Position 2, 4 fighters, similar setup, range 70-63 meters. She continued her scan, mentally cataloging each position, noting which targets would be her primary and which were secondary threats. The thermal scope showed details that would be invisible to the naked eye, or even night vision. She could see which fighters were more alert based on their movement patterns, which positions had the best fields of fire, where the gaps in their defensive coverage existed. "Douglas, status," Vance's voice in her ear. "In position. Beginning target assessment. Stand by." She spent 5 more minutes watching, learning the patterns. The enemy fighters were professional. They maintained their positions, stayed alert, communicated via radio at regular intervals. But they were also human, which meant they had tells. One guard who kept shifting his weight because he'd been standing too long. Another who turned his head frequently to check behind him, suggesting he was nervous. These small details would help her predict their movements in the critical seconds before she fired. "Targets acquired," she whispered into her radio. 7 positions confirmed. Multiple personnel at each. Ready to engage on your mark. Copy. Stand by for 30 seconds while we move into position. Marley settled into her hidden spot, making herself comfortable. This was the part that most people didn't understand about sniping: the waiting. Sometimes you spent hours or even days in position, barely moving, barely breathing, waiting for the perfect moment. Tonight she'd only wait 30 minutes, but those 30 minutes would feel like hours while her adrenaline spiked and her mind ran through scenarios. She controlled her breathing, using the techniques she'd learned from meditation and yoga. In through the nose, out through the mouth, heart rate steady at 60 beats per minute. Muscles relaxed but ready to act. The rifle was an extension of her body, familiar and comfortable. The night air was cold at this elevation, maybe 40 degrees, good for shooting. Cold air was denser, affected ballistics less than hot air. The wind was steady at about 8 knots from the northwest, with occasional gusts to 12. She'd need to account for that, but it was manageable. Through her thermal scope, she watched the enemy fighters go about their routine. Radio checks every 10 minutes, position rotations every hour. They were well trained and disciplined, which actually made them more predictable. It was the undisciplined fighters who were harder to anticipate because they didn't follow patterns. Douglas, Viper 1, Vance's voice. We're in position. Ready to move on your shots. Call when ready. Marley took a deep breath and let it out slowly. This was it. 7 shots, 90 seconds, no mistakes. Roger, Viper 1. Beginning engagement sequence in 10 seconds. 9. She settled the crosshairs on her first target. The machine gunner in position 1. Through the thermal scope, his head was a bright spot of heat against the darker background. Range 80-47 meters, wind 8 knots, northwest. Temperature 42 degrees, angle 15 degrees downward. Her finger found the trigger, taking up the slack. 3, 2, 1. Engaging. The rifle spoke. Total darkness. The suppressed shot was barely louder than a cough. The sound was immediately swallowed by the mountain wind. Through her scope, Marley watched the heat signature in position 1 drop instantly. A perfect headshot. The target eliminated before his nervous system could even process what had happened. She worked the bolt. The mechanical action smooth and familiar. Brass ejected. New round chamber. Second target already in her crosshairs. Position 2. Range 70-63 meters. Wind, same. Main target, machine gunner. The rifle kicked against her shoulder. Another perfect shot. The heat signature collapsed, but now things got complicated. The other fighters in position 2 were starting to react, not to her shots, which they couldn't hear, but to the fact that their machine gunner had just fallen. She saw them moving toward him, probably thinking he'd collapsed or had some kind of medical emergency. Third shot, the fighter bending over the machine gunner. He went down, bolt action. Fourth shot, the last fighter in position 2, now turning toward the mountainside, starting to understand that someone was shooting at them. He dropped before he could raise his weapon or key his radio. 12 seconds elapsed. 4 targets down. Position 3. Range 69 meters. 3 fighters, all alerted now by the commotion at position 2. One was already on his radio, probably calling for a status check from the positions Marley had just eliminated. She put a bullet through his head mid-sentence. His companions reacted instantly, dropping to cover. Weapons coming up. They knew they were under attack now, but they didn't know from where. The suppressed shots gave them no muzzle flash to track, no sound to triangulate. They were firing blindly into the darkness. Bullets sprayed across the mountainside hundreds of meters from Marley's position. She eliminated the first fighter, bolt action. Eliminated the second, both shots to the head, both instant kills. 23 seconds. 7 targets down. Positions 4 through 7 were fully alert now. She could see them through her thermal scope. Fighters scrambling to their weapons. Some firing randomly into the darkness. Others scanning with night vision devices trying to locate the threat. But they were looking in the wrong direction. They assumed the attack was coming from the valley floor, from the compound side. Illogical directions for an assault. None of them were looking up the mountain where a single shooter was systematically eliminating their defensive positions. Position 4. Range 6. 4 fighters. 2 of them firing a heavy machine gun toward the compound approach. The other 2 trying to establish radio communication with the positions that weren't responding. Marley put bullets through both radio operators first, denying them the ability to call for reinforcements. Then the machine gunners. 2 quick shots, both targets eliminated. Bolt action becoming automatic now, her hands moving without conscious thought. Muscle memory from 10,000 repetitions taking over. 41 seconds. 11 targets down. Position 5 was returning fire now, but they were shooting at ghosts. Long bursts of automatic weapons fire, tearing across the mountainside. Tracer rounds creating arcs of light in the darkness. Beautiful and deadly, but completely useless, because they had no idea where she was. She waited for the tracers to stop. Weapons firing fast tended to empty magazines quickly, then engaged. 3 fighters. 3 shots. 3 kills. The position went silent. 58 seconds. 14 targets down. Positions 6 and 7 were the farthest from her position. Nearly 900 meters at the extreme edge of her effective range with this rifle and ammunition. The wind at that distance would be more unpredictable. The bullet drop more extreme. These would be the hardest shot. Through her scope, she watched fighters in position 6 dragging wounded from position 7, trying to provide aid. They still didn't understand they were being shot by a precise marksman. They probably thought they were taking indirect fire or were under attack by multiple shooters. She adjusted for the extreme range, accounting for the additional wind drift and the severe angle of the shot. Her crosshairs settled on the head of a fighter bent over a wounded comrade. The shot felt different at this range, a longer hang time where she could almost sense the bullet's flight through the cold mountain air. Through her scope, she saw the heat signature drop. Bolt action. Next target. Another shot. Another kill. The remaining fighters in both positions were panicking now, some trying to flee, others firing blindly in all directions. One fighter was on his radio screaming for backup, for air support, for anything that could help them against an enemy they couldn't see. Marley put a bullet through his head, then systematically eliminated every remaining heat signature in both positions. 87 seconds. 22 targets down. She scanned the 7 positions one more time, looking for any movement, any heat signature that indicated a survivor. Nothing. 7 defensive positions completely neutralized, none of them having fired a single shot in her direction. Viper 1, Douglas. All positions clear. You are clear to advance. Jesus Christ. Vance's voice carried a mixture of awe and disbelief. We saw the whole thing through our night optic. That was... I don't even have words for what that was. Save the admiration for later, Master Chief. You have maybe 90 seconds before someone in that compound realizes those positions aren't responding. Move now. Copy. Viper team, advance to phase line Alpha. Douglas, maintain overwatch. Through her scope, Marley watched the SEALs emerge from their concealment and begin their rapid advance toward the compound. They moved fast, too fast to be stealthy, but stealth was no longer the priority. Speed was everything now. She kept her rifle trained on the compound, scanning for new threats. Her primary job was done, but the mission was far from over. The SEALs would be vulnerable during their approach, and while she'd cleared the defensive positions, there were still over 30 enemy fighters in the compound itself. 2 minutes after her last shot, she saw lights coming on in the compound's main building. Someone had finally realized something was wrong. Fighters started emerging from structures, moving toward the defensive positions to check on their comrades. Marley began engaging targets of opportunity. A fighter running toward position 1 with a radio. She dropped him at 650 meters. 2 fighters moving with weapons toward position 3, both eliminated before they'd covered 10 meters. The compound erupted into chaos. Fighters were running in all directions, some trying to man defensive positions, others seeking cover, none of them understanding where the fire was coming from. Douglas, we're at phase line Bravo. 30 seconds to breach. Copy. Be advised, compound is fully alert. You're going to have heavy resistance. Understood. Keep their heads down. Marley switched her attention to the compound's main building, where she could see heat signatures gathering, probably fighters organizing a defense. She couldn't penetrate the building's walls with her rifle, but anyone who stepped outside became a target. A door opened. 3 fighters emerged, weapons ready. She eliminated the first 2 before the third realized what was happening and dove back inside. Breaching now. Vance's voice carried the sounds of explosions and automatic weapons fire. The assault had begun. Through her scope, Marley watched the SEALs flow into the compound with professional violence. Flashbangs detonated, blowing out windows and doors. Gunfire erupted from multiple positions. The carefully planned operation had transformed into controlled chaos. Her job now was to make sure none of the enemy fighters could organize a counterattack or escape. She scanned constantly, looking for heat signatures attempting to flank the SEAL positions or retreat from the compound. There was movement on the north side of the compound. 4 fighters trying to escape through what they probably thought was an unwatched route. Marley adjusted her aim and began engaging. First target down. Second target starting to run. Lead the target. Account for movement. Down. third and fourth targets now aware they were being shot at. Diving for cover, she waited for them to emerge, patient, knowing that eventually they'd move. One popped up trying to sprint for better cover. She dropped him mid-stride. The fourth fighter stayed hidden, smart enough to realize that movement meant death. Marley kept her crosshairs on his position, waiting. 30 seconds. 60 seconds. Douglas, we've secured the primary structure. Multiple enemy killed in action taking fire from the secondary building. Copy. I have eyes on a flanking position north side. One target can provide support fire on your mark. Stand by. The transmission cut off in a burst of static and gunfire. Through her scope, Marley saw heat signatures moving rapidly inside the compound, confused patterns that suggested close quarters battle. The SEALs were earning their pay now, clearing rooms in a hostile compound where every door could hide fighters waiting to kill them. The fighter she'd been watching on the north side made his move, probably thinking everyone was too distracted to notice. He was wrong. Marley's bullet caught him as he rose from cover. Douglas. Viper 2. A different voice. Chief Webb, we've got wounded. Need you to keep that north approach clear while we establish casualty collection. Roger. North approach is clear. Be advised. I'm seeing movement in the eastern building. Might be additional fighters staging for a counterattack. Copy. Engaging eastern building now. Marley watched as a team of SEALs maneuvered toward the eastern structure. One of them carried a Carl Gustaf recoilless rifle, a portable anti-armor weapon that could punch through reinforced wall. He dropped to one knee, aimed, and fired. The rocket streaked across the compound and detonated against the eastern building's wall, blowing a hole 3 feet wide. The heat signatures inside the building immediately dispersed, some falling, others running. Marley engaged the runner. 4 shots. 4 targets eliminated before they could establish defensive positions. Eastern building neutralized, Webb reported, moving to clear the communications center. The firefight continued for another 10 minutes, an eternity in combat time. Marley maintained her overwatch position, eliminating any enemy fighters who tried to flee or reinforce. Her shooting was mechanical now. Target acquisition to trigger pull to bolt action to next target. No thought, just execution. Finally Vance's voice came through her ear. Douglas, compound is secure. We have the primary target in custody, multiple enemy killed in action, and we're downloading intelligence from their computers. 2 of my men are wounded, but ambulatory, preparing for extraction. I'll maintain overwatch until you're clear, then move to the extraction point. Negative, Douglas. We're coming to you. Can't risk you moving alone through potentially hostile terrain. Hold position. We'll link up in 30 minutes. Marley smiled slightly. The SEALs had gone from skeptical to protective in the space of one operation. Roger. Holding position. She kept her rifle trained on the compound, watching for any signs of additional enemy forces responding to the firefight. But the thermal scope showed only the SEALs moving through the compound, gathering intelligence, securing prisoners, preparing to leave. 29 minutes later, she heard movement behind her position. Her hand moved to her sidearm before Vance's voice called out soft, Douglas, friendly approaching your 6. Come ahead, Master Chief. Vance appeared, followed by the rest of his team. They looked like they'd been through a war. Uniforms torn, faces smudged with soot and blood, weapons showing the wear of sustained fire. But they were moving well, every man still able to
Hell of a night, Lieutenant, Vance said, extending his hand. Marley shook it. Mission successful. Primary target secured. Intelligence gathered. 2 wounded but nothing life-threatening. By my count, you eliminated 28 enemy fighters before we even entered the compound, then dropped another 10 during our assault. Without you clearing those defensive positions, he shook his head, we'd have walked into a meat grinder. Just doing my job, Master Chief. No, Vance's voice was firm. That wasn't just doing your job. That was some of the finest marksmanship I've seen in 20 years of special operations. The Admiral didn't lie. You're the real deal. Chief Webb approached, his massive frame somehow moving quietly despite his size and equipment load. Ma'am, I owe you an apology. I didn't think it was possible for one shooter to do what you did tonight. I was wrong. No apology needed, Chief. Skepticism is healthy. Keeps people alive. Maybe, but you kept my team alive tonight,
and I won't forget that. The other SEALs were gathering around now, each of them wanting to see the woman who'd eliminated 38 enemy fighters in total darkness from ranges that tested the limits of precision marksmanship. One of the younger operators, a petty officer whose face was still painted with camouflage, spoke up. "Ma'am, how did you— I mean, those shots were incredible. Some of them were 900 meters in pitch darkness. That's not supposed to be possible." Marley began breaking down her rifle, preparing it for movement. "It's just math, petty officer. Ballistics, wind calculation, range estimation. Once you understand the physics, it's just a matter of consistent execution. But under pressure, with our lives depending on it, pressure is just a mental state. You train until the skills are automatic. Then you trust your training." She finished packing her rifle and stood. "Besides, the shooting was the easy part. The hard part was what you all did, clearing a hostile compound against determined resistance. That takes courage I didn't need tonight." Vance checked his watch. "Extraction bird inbound in 20 minutes. Let's move to the landing zone. Douglas, you've earned center seat on the bird. No more riding by the door." They moved down the mountain as a team, the SEALs in a protective formation around Marley, like she was precious cargo, which in a sense she was. Someone who just proved she could accomplish things that most special operations planners considered impossible. The extraction went smoothly. Twin Blackhawks came in fast and low, landed just long enough for the team to board, then lifted off and disappeared into the darkness. Behind them, the compound burned, destroyed to deny it to any remaining enemy forces. Marley sat in the center of the cargo bay, surrounded by SEALs who looked at her with a combination of respect, amazement, and the beginning of something like friendship. These men who doubted her 12 hours ago now knew exactly what she was capable of. Admiral Harrington would be pleased. The mission was a success. The primary target captured, intelligence gathered, and 0 friendly casualties. It was the kind of operation that would be classified for decades, studied by future generations of special operators, whispered about in bars where warriors gathered. And at the center of it all was Marley Douglas, who'd spent 90 seconds of focused violence, proving that sometimes the most dangerous person in the entire operational area was the one nobody saw coming. Aftermath. The debriefing room was packed. Admiral Harrington sat at the head of the table, flanked by 2 officers Marley didn't recognize, probably intelligence types from higher up the chain. Master Chief Vance and his team leadership occupied one side of the table. Marley sat alone on the other side, her rifle case on the floor beside her chair. "Let's start with the numbers," Harrington said, pulling up a tablet. 7 defensive positions eliminated in 87 seconds. 28 enemy killed in action during initial engagement. 0 survivors. An additional 10 targets eliminated during compound assault. 2 friendly wounded, both already cleared for return to duty. Primary target captured alive. Intelligence windfall from captured computers and documents. By any measure, this was a textbook special operations success. He looked at Marley. "Lieutenant Douglas, your performance exceeded every expectation. The video analysis of your shots is what— it's already being classified at a level where most people will never see it. But the people who do see it are going to understand that we have a capability most nations don't even know exists." "Thank you, sir. However," Harrington continued, "your success creates a problem. We now have a unit of Navy SEALs who know about you, which means the secret is partially out, and we have potential future operations where your capabilities would be invaluable. I need to discuss your next assignment." Marley had expected this. "Sir, I understood when I joined this program that I'd be working in a classified role for the foreseeable future. I'm prepared to continue in that role, even if it means more operations like last night. More missions where you're the only thing standing between success and catastrophic failure. Especially then, sir. That's what I trained for." Vance spoke up. "Admiral, permission to speak freely." "Granted, Master Chief." "Sir, Lieutenant Douglas saved my team's lives last night. There's no question about that. But asking one person to carry that kind of burden repeatedly, that's a hell of a lot of pressure. What happens when she finally misses? When the shot she needs to make is just beyond human capability?" Marley answered before Harrington could. "Master Chief, I appreciate your concern, but I've been training my entire life to push the boundaries of what's considered possible. Last night wasn't luck or a one-time performance. That's my baseline. And yes, eventually I'll encounter a situation where even my skills aren't enough. But until that day comes, I'm going to keep taking the shots that need to be taken. Chief Webb leaned forward. Ma'am, with respect, the Master Chief has a point. What you did last night was extraordinary, but it's not sustainable. Nobody can maintain that level of performance indefinitely. Eventually fatigue or stress, or just plain bad luck is going to catch up with you. Perhaps, but until it does, I'm the best option you have for situations like last night. How many other operators can you name who could have cleared those 7 positions silently and simultaneously? The room was quiet. Everyone knew the answer. 0. Harrington stood and walked to the window, looking out at the base beyond. Lieutenant Douglas is right. We have a unique capability, and we'd be foolish not to use it. But Master Chief Vance and Chief Webb are also right. We can't burn her out on operations where the margin for error is 0. He turned back to face the room. Here's what we're going to do. Lieutenant Douglas will be assigned to a new unit designation, classified, that operates under Direct Joint Special Operations Command Authority. She'll work with SEAL teams, Delta, Rangers, whoever needs her capabilities, but will be selective about deployments. Only missions where her specific skills are absolutely critical and where no other asset can accomplish the objective. Sir, Marley said, I didn't join the military to sit on the sidelines waiting for the perfect mission. I can be more useful than that. You'll also be training other snipers, Harrington continued, ignoring her protest, sharing your techniques, your mathematical approach to ballistics, your methods for maintaining performance under pressure. We can't create another you, but we can elevate the entire Tier 1 sniper community by having them learn from you. That made more sense. Marley nodded slowly. Understood, sir. When do I start? Immediately. You'll rotate between training assignments and operational deployments. And Lieutenant, Harrington's voice softened slightly, what you did last night will save lives for years to come. The techniques you demonstrated, the proof that one highly skilled operator can accomplish what an entire platoon couldn't. That's going to change how we think about special operations. You've earned the right to choose your path forward. Vance spoke up again. Sir, if I could make a request, when Lieutenant Douglas does deploy operationally, I'd like her working with my team. We've seen what she can do, we trust her capabilities, and we've already established a working relationship. Seems like it would maximize effective. Harrington looked at Marley. Lieutenant, I'd be comfortable working with Master Chief Vance's team again, sir. They're professionals, and after last night we understand each other's capabilities and limitations. Then it's settled. Lieutenant Douglas, you're officially attached to SEAL Team 7 for future operations requiring your skill set. Master Chief, she's yours when she's available. But remember, we don't waste this kind of talent on routine operations. Save her for the missions that matter. Understood, sir. The debriefing continued for another hour, going through every detail of the operation. The intelligence haul from the compound was significant. Information on weapon shipments, financial networks, and planned attacks that would keep analysts busy for months. The captured high-value target was already providing valuable information under interrogation. It was the kind of operation that justified years of training and billions of dollars in special operations funding. And at the center of it all was a 26-year-old lieutenant who'd spent 90 seconds proving that exceptional skill, properly applied, could change the outcome of an entire battle. When the debriefing finally ended, Marley gathered her gear and headed for the door. Vance caught up with her in the hallway. Lieutenant, hold up a second. She stopped and turned. Master Chief, I just wanted to say, when you walked into that briefing tent yesterday, I didn't think you could do it. I thought the Admiral was making a mistake, risking my team on someone untested in combat. I was wrong, and I'm man enough to admit it. No apology necessary, Master Chief. Your skepticism was justified. I was an unknown quantity. Maybe, but you're not unknown anymore. He extended his hand. It would be an honor to work with you again, Lieutenant. My team and I owe you our lives. Marley shook his hand firmly. Your team did the hard work last night, Master Chief. I just cleared the path. Don't underestimate what your men accomplished. We're going to have to agree to disagree on that one. He smiled, but I'll tell you this. Next time someone tells me something is impossible, I'm going to think about you putting bullets on target at 900 meters in total darkness. You've expanded my definition of possible. That's all any of us can do, Master Chief. Keep pushing the boundaries until impossible becomes routine. She left him standing in the hallway and headed back to her quarters. The operation had been a success. Her capabilities were proven, and she had a new assignment that would let her continue doing what she did best, taking the shots nobody else could make, solving problems that seemed impossible, being the asset that made the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure. But as she cleaned and stored her rifle, Marley allowed herself a moment of honest reflection. Chief Webb had been right about one thing: nobody could maintain this level of performance indefinitely. Eventually, she'd encounter a situation beyond even her considerable skills, a shot she couldn't make, a target she couldn't hit, a mission where her best wasn't enough. When that day came, she'd deal with it, but until then she'd keep training, keep improving, keep pushing herself to be better than she was yesterday. Because somewhere in the world, there was another compound full of enemy fighters who thought they were safe behind their defenses, another group of American warriors who'd need someone to clear their path. Another impossible mission waiting for someone skilled enough to make it possible. And when that call came, Marley Douglas would be ready. She'd always be ready. That's what made her different. That's what made her dangerous. That's what made her the person Admiral Harrington called when he needed miracles. 3 months later, the training range at Fort Bragg was brutally, the North Carolina sun turning the concrete firing positions into griddles. 20 sniper students from various special operations units stood in a loose semicircle, watching as Marley set up her rifle on the 1,000-meter range. The shot we're about to demonstrate is considered extremely difficult, she said, her voice carrying across the range. A 1,000-meter target, 15-knot crosswind, elevated shooting position, creating a 12-degree downward angle. Most sniper schools teach that this shot has about a 50% success rate, even for expert marksmen. She settled into position behind her rifle, her movements efficient and practiced. Through her scope, the target appeared impossibly small, a dinner plate-sized circle of steel barely visible against the berm. The key is understanding that ballistics is just physics. Wind drift, bullet drop, Coriolis effect. They're all calculable. Once you've done the math, execution becomes mechanical. She adjusted her scope's turrets, compensating for the conditions. The mental challenge is trusting your calculations enough to commit to the shot. She controlled her breathing, letting her body settle into perfect stillness. The crosshairs stabilized on the target, moving only with the tiny adjustments required to track the wind. The shot felt perfect the moment she broke it. Through the scope, she watched the bullet impact, center mass on the target, the steel ringing audibly even at 1,000 meters. That's one, she said, working the bolt and chambering another round. Watch. She fired 4 more shots in rapid succession, each one finding the target with the same precision. 5 shots, 5 hits, less than 30 seconds elapsed time. The students were silent, processing what they just witnessed. Now, Marley said, standing and stepping back from the rifle. Who wants to try? A hand went up. A Marine Corps scout sniper, Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, who'd been shooting competitively before joining the military. Marley talked him through the setup, explaining her calculations, helping him understand the wind conditions, and how to compensate. His first shot missed by 2 feet. Common mistake, Marley said patiently. You're overcompensating for the wind because it feels stronger than it actually is at this elevation. Trust your wind call, make the adjustment, try again. His second shot was closer. His third actually hit the target. Outstanding, Staff Sergeant. That's the kind of improvement we're looking for. Everyone else, find a shooting position. We're going to spend the next 4 hours working on long-range precision, until you can all make that shot consistently. The students dispersed to their firing positions, and Marley moved among them, offering corrections and guidance. This was her life now. A mixture of training assignments like this one, and operational deployments when situations required her unique capability. In the 3 months since Syria, she'd conducted 4 more combat operations, one in Yemen, eliminating a cell of bomb makers who'd been planning attacks on commercial aviation, one in Somalia,
providing overwatch for a hostage rescue mission. 2 in Afghanistan, supporting SEAL and Delta operations against high-value targets. Every mission successful, every shot on target. 0 friendly casualties while she was on overwatch. But she could feel the weight accumulating. Each operation added to the pressure. The knowledge that teams of elite warriors were depending on her to do things that shouldn't be possible. The expectation had become that Marley Douglas didn't miss, didn't fail, didn't have bad days. It was exhausting in ways that had nothing to do with physical fatigue. "Ma'am," one of the students approached, an Army Ranger with a question about scope adjustment. She spent 10 minutes helping him understand the relationship between minute of angle adjustments and bullet impact at various ranges. This was useful too. Every sniper she trained might someday be the difference between mission success and failure for their team. Every technique she shared might save American lives in some future battle. It wasn't as immediately satisfying as taking the shot herself, but it was important work. Her phone buzzed. A text message from a classified number she recognized. Admiral Harrington. New tasking. Briefing at 1800 hours. Priority 1. Marley looked at her students, all of them working diligently on the range, improving with each shot. Then she looked at her phone again. Priority 1 meant something significant, something that required her specific capabilities. She called over her assistant instructor, a Marine Corps gunnery sergeant, who was perfectly capable of running the range without her. "Gunny, I need to step away. You've got the rest of the day." "Roger that, ma'am. Everything okay?" "Just another meeting. Keep them working on that 1,000-meter shot. I want everyone achieving at least a 60% hit rate before we move to the next evolution." "Will do, ma'am." Marley gathered her gear and headed for her truck. Another brief, another impossible mission. Another chance to prove that the impossible was just the untried. She wondered what it would be this time. What target was so difficult that Admiral Harrington was pulling her off training duty to handle it personally? What situation was so critical that they needed the woman who'd cleared 7 defensive positions in 87 seconds of total darkness? Whatever it was, she'd be ready. She was always ready. That's what made her Marley Douglas, the sniper nobody knew existed, until the moment they needed miracles delivered at the speed of a rifle bullet. The woman who turned impossible into routine. The operator who made sure that when SEAL admirals needed someone to clear enemy positions in total darkness, they knew exactly who to call. She drove toward the briefing, her mind already shifting into operational mode, ready for whatever came next. Because somewhere in the world, enemy fighters were manning defensive positions, thinking they were safe, thinking they were hidden, thinking they were ready for whatever the Americans might throw at them. They had no idea that Marley Douglas existed, and by the time they figured it out, it would already be too late. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to hear more powerful stories of brave women in uniform.